Hello there, my name is Gary, as you probably know. Welcome to this video, which is going to talk about a little new module I've got for my main mobile rack. Well, it's actually probably my main rack as well, because I think I've got everything I need in this tiny little HP 104x2. But anyway, I'm going to talk about the Poly Cinematic from a company in the UK called KNOBULA. Funny name. And this has been around for over a year, I think, even longer. So I'm pretty late to the party in looking at this. And it's very much a great addition to my rack, because one of the things I like to do is be very as melodic as possible when I'm doing patches. I can go abstract and more techno-y and EDM and styles if I want to with this system, but this is primarily to bring, for me anyway, that the sort of rich pads and chordal elements into my patches, or probably just presume to call them ensemble pieces, because as with the disting as well, I've particularly got two polyphonic synthesizers built in here, and even the surface to some extent, when you put it onto a maximum decay, I think has 8 voices, and the same with the pluck over here. So, but the Disting EX and the KNOBULA are particularly, designed to be polyphonic. But the Poly Cinematic is stereo as well, which is fantastic, because another thing with modular, as well as it being traditionally quite monophonic, everything is single sound sources, one at a time, and then you mix them all together and it sounds quite rich. But this also has a stereo output as well, so we're exploring some of that. So I'm just going to patch the stereo output into my Dopther 138S, where I can pan it each side of the stereo, and patch a MIDI in. There's not a lot of CV control over this, and I suppose that's one of the things I like about it least, is the fact I can't modulate some of the parameters apart from frequency. The rest of them are kind of inputs. So we've got a MIDI in, which I'll patch in. We've got a voltage per octave, octave per volt, input for traditional CV, and a gate trigger for traditional CV, and then a special one which is Chord Select, which allows you to send in some, I'll probably do this later if I get time, it's not a big one for me, but it's kind of interesting. Allows you to send a CV, specific CV in, so say from the Acaria you can set step voltages, or I could do it from one of the Ornament and Crime hemispheres, specific sequences of set voltages. In fact, the Pamela's Pro workout is ideal for this, because you can get it to sequence specific voltages as well. But anyway, let's just have a listen. So currently it's on there's 3 waveforms, which don't sound like a lot, but once you get everything else going, it really opens it out. There's a triangle wave, or a sawtooth rather. So sawtooth, square, and then I think a modulated sine or an organy sound, and or FM type sine wave. You can see there it's polyphonic, so and 8 voices. When it steals notes, for those who are interested, if you go to 9 and above, it's quite a silent steal. It doesn't sort of cut out, it doesn't sound like it cuts out notes. But, there's also, just in terms of sound sources, 3 modes for each of these waveforms. So we've got mode 1 here, mode 2. I think it's adding oscillators, widening them, making them slightly apart from each other. And what I've played so far really is, I'd never use those types of sounds, of course, and we'll go into that in a second, how to make them richer. It's got a built-in reverb, which I probably won't use unless I'm doing a very simple patch where I don't want to use the FX aids, because I've got two FX aid XLs. So if I want a sort of biggish reverb, and all types of reverbs, 32 reverb presets I've got into this FX Aid XL. I've also got this one dedicated to delay. If I want to do some of that, I'll just use those on the sort of master outputs. But this, the built-in one's very good quality. So, and it also has the effect of utilizing the stereo. It's not my favorite way it utilizes stereo. I'll go over that in a second, where I can spread the oscillators, but it's also got the ability, press shift and the FX, to have a much bigger reverb. Which is obviously a crazy infinite release one. So let's just go back to a smaller one for now. In fact, I'll turn it off for now. The big attraction for me is this detuning the oscillators. As far as I'm aware, it's got 56 oscillators. So that's a lot. And when you start to detune, and this is where it comes alive. So even on the basic sawtooth mode 1, some slight detune. And a lovely effect. I'll just put the sort of filtering middly. And this detune function also can go to fifths in the middle. Whoops, fifths in the middle. And then octaves on the far right. And in between those, if you're in performance mode, you get some very interesting detune effects. So let's just go around the circle. I'll just play a constant chord. Sounds nice there, nice and rich. Go too far, it sounds pretty horrible. When you get to the fifths, let's go lower. When you go to the fifths, it depends on the notes you play for it to make sense, of course. So if we're in like A minor, that's an A and an E. If we play a D with that, in chord mode, we're getting the D with the A, so that kind of works. If we play the E, though, we're getting the B, so you just have to be careful. I think it's designed for people who want to do more that type of thing, single notes. But I prefer it there, where you get very rich sounds. And then the envelope on the top, this is where it comes into its own for sort of big ambient pads. I think I'll play with my left hand and control with this one. So let's turn the release to pretty long. I'll actually make it infinite in a second, and we'll make the sustain. This middle button, by the way, goes from a decay to a sustain. And you can't hear it really in this mode, so that's good. So on infinite release, I can, for example, build up a nice endless chord. So we've got and if I change the modes, so that's added extra oscillation or extra detuning of the oscillators, and I think added some more as well, mode 3. A bit more detuning. This very fine amount of detuning to get what I'd call that sort of lush sound without it sounding too out of tune. So that's into psycho territory, but about, you know, bang on 9 o'clock, it was very lush sound. And obviously it'd be more lush if I modulated the frequency, which I'll do in a second. I just wanted to show you the basic things. A bit of resonance. Seems to be keeping that high note there, which I hadn't done before. Generally when you're in this sort of mode, let's start low. When you're in this sort of mode, if you add notes, it's sort of, as you add more notes past the 8 voice, it should sort of take the last ones or remove the first one. I think it did that. I may be doing it, I just didn't notice them. So that's one mode. Obviously the different waveforms in this mode, let's call it the epic pad mode, and obviously having a nice slow attack really brings this one to life. In fact, let's put a slow modulation onto the filter. Probably put one here. I've got a attenuator because this particular LFO is a bit aggressive, so I'm just going to see if we'll do this without cluttering up what you can see. I've also got the key follow on, which means that as I go higher up the keyboard, the higher notes have sort of full frequency, as opposed to being less bright. So if you turn that on, the high, and obviously got the low pass filter going. There's also notch and high. If I do notch will tend to get a sweeping. Right, let's turn that off. The other big thing, because that was all well and good, but it was all coming from the middle, so I did a bit of reading of the manual, as you're supposed to do, and this is where it got exciting for me, because you can actually spread the oscillators across the stereo field and get some gorgeous effects. So if I press the shift key there, and frequency, I'm going to turn it full. So what I just did there was actually spread the oscillators around the stereo field. So now when we do this, so each note, I don't know if you hear that, I suppose I can do it this way. So that oscillator is sort of rightish on mine. That's coming from the left. That's sort of middly. And if you're doing a sequence, let's just do a random sort of sequencey type thing. You can presumably hear it bouncing around the stereo there. But it does make it makes those chords even more epic. So these infinite release chords. I can see me mostly using it in this slightly detuned mode, because as you go into the fifths, it thins out the textures, and obviously as you go into the octaves, it also thins out, it basically tuning the oscillators much more precisely to the octaves. So really this sort of mode here is going to be much more suitable for, you know, the rich oscillating, rich sort of deep pads and things. Alright, so you could hear it stealing the lower notes. Now I started with the lower notes, and as I played the higher ones, it came in with, it started to delete the earlier notes. The other thing that the big pads make make sense on is the sort of organy, sine wavy sounds. If you're into big organs, excuse the expression. And of course, a bit of delay. In stereo, this is a stereo delay, the FX8 XL, and then the reverb, just to add extra dimension to these. You could sort of listen to that all day long. A few extra notes here and there, added once every hour. There's a click came in there when it, I think, stole something. To look into the note stealing when it, I mean, I'm sure this thing is not designed to be playing 8 notes and then adding 9, 10, 11, 12. Generally, I'm sure it's meant to be, you know, as like a pad of perhaps 3 notes like this. And then as you add extra notes, it's not going to steal them. Interested to see what you think about that. I mean, for some people it may not even be used in this way. Of course, it's because it's just a polyphonic module, then I'm sure some people will be using it just to play, you know, chords. God forbid. Get rid of the effects for the moment. So that's in the sine wave mode. Let's just go into this. I'm going to leave the frequency spread for the moment, just to make it more interesting stereo-wise. There's no effects on it now. This is purely the module. The decay, if you want short stabby things, it makes sense with a sequencer. So let's just get a bit of bloom going over here, just so we can have sequencer. So gate into the trigger. I've been experimenting and trying to play MIDI with the CV with limited success at the moment, as probably you'll see. So bloom, I'm just going to clock from PAMs up here. Let's choose a clock that actually is working. So this is a PAMs. This is bloom channel 1. Clock from PAMs. Just okay, so and what's happening here is it's playing the chords. So there's two modes that this whole module's in. This is the chord trigger mode, so when I'm triggering here, it's actually triggering on every beat a chord which it's taking from the voltage in rather than the chord select. So to just get it operate as a standard module, I need to press shift and trigger. I think I have to keep my finger on it. Oh, it's just not doing. Oh, there we go. I'll just take the modulation of the filter out for the moment, it's confusing me. Right, so I don't know if you saw that, shift and this. I think you have to hold it. I'm still learning how long to hold things. Okay, so that's Bloom over here, just triggering it in a normal module type mode. So this is why I was saying it'd be great if I could play MIDI over the top, you know, like chords. So it has something strange going on. I'm sure there's a way of doing this. It'd be lovely to be able to use the module just to go, you know, play a chord and have the sequencer going over the top of it. But there seems to be some cutting out going on. Perhaps it's firmware updatable, I don't know. Also, the level of the MIDI is a lot lower than is coming from the CV in. Also, just about hear the MIDI there. So anyway, that's count of everything, I suppose. So this is great when you've got a sequence going. Let's vary the sequence a bit with Bloom. We've also got a pitch control, so there's a fine tune option, but in the standard mode, I think it's an octave higher and an octave lower, and then there's a middle one. So I can go an octave higher there. Seems to be tuned low, but I can tune Bloom up a bit. So that's the pure square wave, mode 2. Oh yeah, mode 2's added an octave, I think. I'm not sure what mode 3 is doing. Also, you can read up on these, and then a bit of detuning. I'm trying to get some nice sort of square wave, slightly detuned. There, that sort of thing I was after. And if you had a obviously long release, you're going to get, because it's polyphonic, you're going to get them trailing into each other. And a bit of delay. For the delay I need to sync it quickly. So that's why I've got the FX8 XLs, is so I can have it synchronized to the tempo. I'm just choosing the right division. Oops. I'm back in a second. Ooh, hello back. Sorry about that. I just had actually a delivery of a Pelican case for this thing, because the tip-top backpack is great, but it is not too protective, so I kind of want to protect the things, and a nice Pelican case is the price of one of these modules, so it's definitely a worthwhile investment. So what was I doing? I was just talking about... Bring that modulation back in for this thing. So the key follow full there, you can hear it brighten the sound up quite a lot. Sometimes like it half, so that it's not too obvious when you go up the higher registers that the filter's over bright. Perhaps I'll turn it off for the moment on this one. Of course, it would have been great if there was modulation for particularly release and decay, but it's, you know, it's what it is. So one thing I wanted to check, so that's basic sequencing. I'm not sure there's anything else relevant to show you in that one. There is, by the way, a volume control on the module. If you press Shift and Attack at the same time, you can actually change the output, because it is a little... Let's get rid of that. There we go. It is a little low for Eurorack in terms of the output, so I have had to turn it full volume. The other thing I want to show you while I've got the CVs going is the chord select. So let's just take the MIDI out for the moment. I'll probably go back to that in a second. Is the chord select. So if I just take a gate into the trigger and then put it back into chord mode. So again, Shift and press the trigger. There we go. I'm still not sure how long. I think it's like 2-3 seconds. You've got to press Shift and then keep your finger on the trigger. So it's now playing a chord that was locked into the memory there. Now, you can see on the main camera here, I'm going to take a CV output from this Hikari just to show you the principle of this. So what this is going to do on the chord select is, based on the note here, change the chord. So this note is obviously going up in voltage, and I've actually pre-programmed some, and it does save the state. Pre-programmed some chords in here. Let's go to some nice sawtooth ones. So if I wanted like a 4-chord sequence that plays quite fast, I just need to clock the Hikari here, so let's get it at the same rate for the moment. I think the first chord is, I changed it because it does remember the last thing you play, so that can get confusing sometimes. So we've got the delay on as well, so let's just take the delay off, so it's nice and simple. There's no effects on, and it's playing 4 chords there. It's gating twice the speed because of the bloom. If I gate it at the same speed, and obviously this makes sense if you're holding chords, so you know, we could have the first. Let's just go for that double one. I don't know if you can see it on the main camera. I've roughly put it in position. It's a bit hit and miss until you lock in something you like. The nice thing with the Hikari is I can do this sort of thing. Just lock a chord in and then release a sequence. Let's make it 5 chords. Just for something a bit different. And then obviously you'd have, during a performance, you'd have to control the releases, the filter. Let's bring the filter in again just to make it more interesting. Modulation. Whoops. That's weird. Sorry, I plugged it into the voltage for octave rather than a filter, which is weird. And we can, obviously there's different ways of increasing the gating. And this probably comes alive with a bit of a kick, so I'll just do a basic, Pam's Pro workout into my drums, and then out to, I think, a non-delayed okay, a bit less. And because we got 8 chords, I think there's 8 chords you can have, I can vary each of those, make it much more complicated, perhaps over an 8-step sequence. And of course, from Pam's Pro or Ornament and Crime, I could have it modulating the gate a bit more interesting rather than that constant thing. In fact, I could use the div as well for that, which I often do for ratchety type things. Go back to one chord. See, I can control it from here. I think let's turn it down a touch. I think the point of this chord trigger is that you sometimes don't have a MIDI keyboard and you don't want to use a MIDI keyboard, but you still want these sort of dancey, chordy things. I mean, it doesn't even need to be dancey, it could be more, if we go super slow, let's just, easiest to just turn Pam tempo down to pretty slow. And the gate a bit slower. So that's playing a much more laid back chord sequence. It's the same chords. Let's go lower. I just noticed there's a bit of a, it feels like a push thing, but I think it's just a bit wobbly, that these two here. And suddenly it sounds very Tangerine Dreamy. Particularly if we had lots of resonance. Let's put some reverb on, a bit of delay. So I slightly lose track using this method of which chords do what. I program them in rather randomly. I think the C minor, so it's doing, sort of randomly C minor chords. Well, they're not that random actually. I could have put a random thing in. In fact, I could do that from Pam's Pro here. So say on output 1 here, I could put a. So let's take the chord select out of number 1, Pam's Pro. And then we'll make that a random LFO and level 25%. Let's make it a bit higher. I'm not sure what's required for this, but generally, kind of what I'm doing here is just making this a random thing. I've got it quantized to a scale now. Let's just see what happens. So that's playing a B flat random. See if it changes the chord. Need to, well, there we go. So it's changing, it's definitely changing the chords from there. Probably just need to speed it up so we can hear it happening. Let's go to half speed. So that's playing an F, there's a G. Oh, that's a weird one. Okay, so that's why we'd use the chord select, and you can see it's great if you're if you don't want to lug around a keyboard like that. But let's go back to MIDI. Interestingly, the MIDI, if it's just the MIDI plugged in, we get the full volume. As soon as I plug a CV in, let's do a note CV from here, it sort of drops the MIDI output. So there's the MIDI. put the voltage octave in, and then the MIDI falls into the background. It's still there, I can see it triggering, but so it'd be great if you could have both. I'm not sure KNOBULA will be listening to this. Much better things to do. And again, this sort of comes alive when you're adding other polyphonic elements. I was having fun using disting with some big string sounds, sort of randomly playing. In fact, I could probably do that. We'll just use the random C minor coming in. Just need the output from the disting up to the top there. I also need a trigger. So let's just plug that in, just to show you how, you know, with a sort of infinite release pad on the Poly Cinematic, and then add some interesting things from another polyphonic thing with just 2 modules. You can get quite a big thing going. So I think that's the trigger. Are you there, disting? Right. Oops. So it's definitely there, but it's, I think I changed the level on the Pro, so I'm just going to make the level less. Oops. I'll also make the probability less. What I'm doing now is programming the disting to be a bit more cinematic, so I'm going to make the level a couple of octaves. Right, now let's go back to the very beginning, a sawtooth, big pad sound, infinite release, just to build a big pad up, perhaps a bit higher in the middle pitch mode. I've also noticed to get the infinite release, you've got to have the decay sustain control somewhere in the middle. Again, it may be a anomaly that I've got to work out. A bit more orchestral stuff. We've got the reverb on already, a bit of delay. Oh, I'll just increase the tempo of PAMs to something a bit more decent. So lots of pad adventures ahead. So the modulation I've got on this attenuator cable, which I've still sort of got to get used to. Just a tiny amount, just to get the filter modulating. A bit too much reverb, I think. Bit of fun there. I'll just turn the disting off. So yeah, combining excuse me, a couple of polyphonic elements. One of the reasons I've got the loop, 2 loopers here as well, is that when you start to go stereo out of there into the 2 sides of the looper and then trigger these precisely from the clock, and I've shown this before in previous videos, you do end up with this amazing stereo ability to just keep layering and layering polyphonic elements on top of each other, because these are panned left and right. You could do it with just one as well, but stereo is fantastic. And you could even combine the 2 polyphonics in stereo, because this has got a nice stereo output as well, and get the very rich thing building up, either in normal loop layers or the Frippertronic one, the purple colour. I don't know if you can see the colours. Will mean that over time the previous loops will start to disappear, so you can end up with these constantly evolving stereo pads of these 2 going in here. Just mult the audios into these 2. So that's lots of potential there, but I hope you've got a bit of an insight into this. Like I said, it's great for those pad things, but as I demonstrated, you can get some very nice rhythmic things going as well, and a bit of randomization. Like I said, the main drawback, the only cons for me are the lack of CV elements to modulate things, just to keep the sounds interesting and moving all the time. It's kind of a performative instrument. I've noticed, you know, I'm constantly on the filter and the envelope depth and a bit of the resonance as well. Those three I always have going. But hopefully that gives an insight into how to use this in a modular setup. In terms of the workflow, often I'd start with the pads and things, and using the granulators, just to sort of come out of the ether, these sort of very atmospheric, mysterious things, and then gradually add sequences and rhythm and so on with the other elements. So yeah, it's going to be a fun time with that one. So thanks very much. Please like and subscribe and all that. Thank you very much. Bye bye.